And this all comes as the Jewish people celebrate the holiday of Sukkot, which celebrates the harvest, and it commemorates God's protection of the Jewish people when they left Egypt. It's a celebration of life, and it comes after Yom Kippur, a day of atonement, and the holiest day on the Jewish calendar. Well, this year's holiday comes again on the backdrop of the suffering in Gaza and maybe, just maybe, an end to the war in Israel. That's something on the mind of my next guest and a lot of Jews in America. Rabbi Rick Jacobs is the president of the Union for Reform Judaism and joins me now. Rabbi, so good to see you.
Good to be with you, Kara.
So, as I mentioned, you are the president of the Union for Reform Judaism, which takes a much more liberal view of religion. In communities like yours, you've seen a lot of empathy and concern over the suffering in Gaza. How complicated is this moment for Jews in America, especially this week? And what are you hearing from your congregants?
So I appreciate the question. The calendar comes with so many things seemingly at cross purposes. We have October 7th yesterday, the second anniversary of the attack of October 7th in 2023. We also have, as you said beautifully, Sukkot, the harvest holiday. Last week, the Day of Atonement, introspection, trying to assess the deepest meaning of our lives. And the truth is, I think our community is ready for this war to be over. We've been ready for a long time. The people of Israel, the majority of Israelis, are ready for this war to be over. And I know the innocent people of Gaza are ready for this war to be over. I'll tell you how I deal with this. I have a heart. You have a heart. The heart has many chambers. And as I reflect, particularly yesterday, on the 1,200 people who were slaughtered, raped, 250 were taken hostage, I have a deep feeling in my heart of love and loss. But I also have room in my heart for the suffering of innocent Palestinians in Gaza. They also are created by God, and they deserve a better future than what Hamas has been able to give them. So, and on the backdrop of this whole thing, we have this peace process initiated by President Trump. The negotiations are moving quickly. Is it possible that this war will come to an end, that the hostages will be released, that there'll be a flood of humanitarian aid into Gaza, and that the next step of the journey will also be articulated? How do we move to a better tomorrow? We are hopeful. We certainly know there's significant obstacles still ahead, but this is a moment for us also to lean into the hope that we deeply feel.
Yeah, we all are leaning into hope, that's for sure. You know, we just passed 2 years since the devastating October 7th attack by Hamas in Israel. Now President Trump has this plan that's being negotiated as we sit here and speak together. Are you hopeful, and you just mentioned hope, that this conflict will finally end and the hostages will be returned this time around?
We not only have to hope, but I've spent a lot of time with the hostage families and with some of the hostages who have returned. And they believe that literally the time is so of the essence that maybe we have of the 48 that are still held hostage, maybe 20 are still alive, but they're holding on to life by a thread. So it's not a situation where they can really afford to be left in the dungeons of Gaza for very much longer. But can I just also point out, Kira, the story you just put on camera before we began this segment was a protest in Boston. It wasn't just a pro-Palestinian protest. Can you imagine people protesting on the day that is the greatest loss of life for the Jewish people since the Holocaust? To protest on that day is to throw salt into the wounds of a mourning people. I have room in my heart for the suffering of the innocents on both sides. Evidently, there are people who are willing to take to the streets who don't have empathy, that Jewish suffering and pain and loss is not somehow part of their stance in this moment. That makes me quite sad and takes away some of the hopefulness of this moment.
Point well made. And there's no hiding the dramatic rise in anti-Semitism since the start of this war. How does the Jewish community move forward if and when this war does end?
Well, we're living not only with the 2-year anniversary of this war, but the spike in anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish hatred is going on a graph that's literally going straight up. And Jews are feeling that vulnerability. On Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year in Manchester, England, There was an attack on the synagogue as they were gathered for prayer for the holiest day, and 2 of the worshipers were murdered in cold blood. That's a reality. On one level, it was horrifying. On another level, it was completely predictable given this upswing in anti-Semitism. So we feel vulnerable. You mentioned the holiday of Sukkot, the harvest holiday. We dwell outside in a very simple hut. There's no protection in that hut. The only protection is, frankly, from the people and the community surrounding you. And we feel very vulnerable as a Jewish community. So with the hope and the concern is also a feeling of vulnerability. But our community showed up not only on the Day of Atonement, on Yom Kippur, showing up for this holiday of Sukkot. We're actually finding there's a surge of pride and confidence that being Jewish is what gives us our core. It gives us the tools to live a life of ethical and moral commitment. And so with all these mixed emotions and the feeling of loss and vulnerability, we're also finding our strength in our solidarity and hoping against hope that this chapter will end and that there'll be a better tomorrow for the people of Gaza, for the people of Israel, for the whole region. That's what this moment can be about, not just to stop the bloodshed, which needs to be stopped, but can it point to a better way for that community to share the land, to share that blood-soaked part of the earth? That is our greatest prayer and our greatest hope.
May your faith continue to flourish. Rabbi Rick Jacobs, so great to have you today. Thank you for such a wonderful conversation.
Good to be with you, Kira.